DateLine. Headline breaking news with snark that's been building up all year long. DateLine. Flashback. 2009. The culture of corruption in Washington, D.C. is born. As most of you out there have lost count in the ever-increasing Obama administration scandals, the Solyndra pay-to-play kickback scandal was one of the first. I mean, it was then preceded by Fast and Furious, IRS targeting tax-exempt applications from conservative groups, Benghazi, NSA snooping, Rosengate, the Boston bombing, the IRS targeting Romney donors, the Obamacare, the kickbacks, and eventual illegal changing of the written law of Obamacare, the Sestak bribe, the Reverend Wright attempted bribery, the other Obama donor kickbacks that were like Solyndra that happened with NR1, Light Squared, and Fisker, just to name a few.
Get to the point.
Hey, I was going for the Guinness World Record and trying to name all of the Obama scandals in under an hour. Anyway, as more and more evidence of criminality will be pushed to light, now with 2 federal judges' rulings forcing this transparent administration to turn over damning documents it's been trying to hide.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
To ignore these revelations of felonious behavior in the Fast and Furious and IRS scandals, loony liberals will have to push their heads even deeper into the sand. But let's go back to 2009 and refresh everyone's memory about Solyndra and how everyone should have realized what crooks are running the country now.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Solyndra was one of the many green energy scams that was begging for taxpayer money from the administration that they donated heavily to just months earlier in the 2008 election cycle. As was reported during the time, George Kaiser, who was head of Solyndra, donated heavily to Barack Obama, and in the weeks leading up to the administration giving his company $500 million, Kaiser made many visits to the White House to secure the loan. The same loan that the Bush administration had denied less than a year earlier because, as they said at the time, Solyndra can't compete with cheap Chinese solar panels and may go bankrupt.
Duh!
But since Kaiser had already paid Obama to play, this time $540 million was given to Solyndra, and only months later, the company, of course, went bankrupt.
It's incredible.
But what wasn't highly reported at the time, Michelle Obama, the right-hand man to the president, Valerie Jarrett, and political advisor David Axelrod were also tied into the Solyndra scandal.
Wow.
But you'll have to wait until later in DateLine to hear the details of that.
Boo!
I know. Just stay tuned. DateLine. Havana, Cuba. There are celebrations all over Cuba today. Not in the rundown, filthy streets, but in the villas from all of the Castro brothers' cronies.
Champagne wishes and caviar dreams.
With President Obama throwing a lifeline to a dictatorship that's on its last legs, the left, that has been claiming for years that Barack is not a socialist, can't really cover this one up anymore.
Duh!
In a move that not only shows his ignorance or willing denial of the powers of the presidency, Obama says that he will reestablish an embassy in Havana.
You're a moron!
Even though the president absolutely does not have the power to open an embassy anywhere by royal edict.
It's good to be the king.
Maybe Obama has a trick up his sleeve. Maybe after he makes Mexico the 51st state, he will also make Cuba a state of the United States.
Oh, I'd love that.
Come to think of it, maybe, just maybe, it wasn't one of his many gaffes when he said,
57 states?
Maybe he meant when he's done fundamentally transforming America, there will be 57 states.
Okay.
But reality, as usual, has escaped our most brilliant president ever.
But let me just.
Not only does he think he can open an embassy, but he thinks the American public is too stupid to read a fact check on his Cuba announcement that was chock full of lies.
Lies.
The narcissist in chief takes credit for the release of Cuba's political prisoners because of the work by, as he says, quote unquote, my team.
Wow, what a nerd.
Not even the left-wing Washington Post fell for that doozy. They point out that the prisoners Obama referred to being released were due to be released anyway because the negotiations 4 years ago done by not his team,
Lies.
but by the Vatican and the Spanish government.
Lies.
Besides the plethora of lies, Obama's forgetting historical facts of brutality, aiding of terrorists, assisting in bloody revolutions for other oppressive communists like in Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador, and El Salvador, just to name a few. The president tries to make a moral equivalence because Cuba recently sent hundreds of healthcare workers to Africa to help fight Ebola.
Say what?
Yep, you got it. Decades of promoting and propagating bloodshed all over South America, as well as recently being caught only last year smuggling missile equipment to North Korea, and imprisoning anyone who speaks out against this oppressive regime, must all be forgiven because they sent help for Ebola.
Mr. President, this is ridiculous.
Fact of the matter is, with gas prices falling all over the world because of the U.S. and its fracking on private lands, Cuba's dictators were about to collapse since its main sugar daddies in Russia and Venezuela can't prop them up anymore.
That's the fact, Jack!
So to those of you who think that Barack Obama made this unilateral move to help the Cuban people that have suffered in poverty for decades under a brutal dictatorship, think again. And for those of you who say that the embargo wasn't working after 5 decades, you are the people Gruber was talking about.
You imbeciles!
Once the Russian and Venezuela money dried up, you can bet your bottom dollar that finally the embargo would have crushed the commies in Havana, and that is why Obama stepped in. It's just one communist dictator coming to the aid of another.
That's a fact, Jack!
DateLine, Delaware. In a story that isn't well known, DateLine will bring to you and expose the crooked double standard in the people who are running this country.
Dynamite!
Former candidate for U.S. Senate from the Blue Hen State.
Say what?
Yeah, I didn't know that Delaware's nickname was the Blue Hen State until I looked it up on Wikipedia too.
Okay.
But this portion of DateLine is to expose the two classes that exist in America. Not the difference between the rich and the poor.
The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer.
And under President Obama and 8 years of Harry Reid running and ruining the Senate, the gap between rich and poor is wider than it was under George W. Bush. But we are talking about the two political classes, conservative and liberal. Conservative America gets targeted by this government's agencies like the IRS, FEC, and DEA, and liberal America commits high crimes and misdemeanors and gets away with it.
Outrageous! Outrageous!
The story that encapsulates this despicable part of Obama's America is about what happened to the former Republican candidate from Delaware, Christine O'Donnell. The story began at the end of last month. Ms. O'Donnell made her abuse at the hands of this vindictive administration public in an interview last week. She said, "The day before I was heading out of town for the Thanksgiving weekend, my bank told me the IRS had frozen my accounts. They didn't give me a reason why, just a phone number to call." Unquote.
It's incredible.
O'Donnell explained how she called the Internal Revenue Stasi and was told the agency claimed that from a 2008 house transaction, she still owed $30,000 in taxes, but she explained to them that it was long ago accounted for on her federal returns.
That's the fact, Jack!
She then begged the agency to check her tax records and eventually was told the levy was generated in error and her accounts would be unfrozen. Even though the IRS officials removed the levy, they first withdrew all the funds from her account.
Say what?
They said that removing the funds was also an error and the funds would be returned to her.
That's a bunch of malarkey.
Even to this day, the funds have still not been replaced.
Well, I think it's outrageous.
Now let's compare that to the untouchable class of this country, liberal America. President Obama's advisor, Al Sharpton, owes the IRS $4 million.
Hard to comprehend, but that's true.
Democrat Congressman Charlie Rangel still owes millions to the IRS after being censured by the House for a plethora of ethics violations back in 2009.
That's terrible.
Both had worked hand in glove for the person who put the Solyndra and Pigford scams together. And President Obama's first and only choice for Secretary of Treasury was Timothy Geithner, who also turned out to be another tax cheat.
It goes on forever.
All these admitted crooks are running around scot-free while conservative groups are targeted. Conservative donors are audited into submission by the IRS until they stop donating to Republican candidates. And this is happening to conservatives who haven't done anything wrong.
That is so much crap.
Glorious will be the day that the cancer that is liberalism will be completely expunged from any power structure running and ruining law-abiding Americans' lives.
Amen, brother. Amen.
DateLine, the Department of Injustice. As we have been at the forefront of exposing the most lawless Attorney General in history, Eric Holder, we here at DateLine have another exclusive.
It's incredible.
While liberals like to think there are no real scandals in the Obama administration, not only was the Justice Department stonewalling and hiding documents in the Fast and Furious bloody scandal, but they have just been caught again hiding emails pertaining to its involvement in the IRS targeting scandal.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
As with Fast and Furious, a federal judge demanded Holder turn over communications between the infamous Lois Take the Fifth Lerner and the Justice Department in what is obvious criminality. In these over 800 documents ordered for release, Lerner was talking to the DOJ about prosecuting tax-exempt entities.
Oh my God.
When the government watchdog group Judicial Watch won a lower court ruling to see all communication between Take the Fifth Lerner and the Justice Department, the DOJ turned over two heavily redacted documents and withheld in their entirety the rest of the 832 documents the judge ordered them to turn over.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
So Obama's Justice Department was ordered to turn over documents in both Fast and Furious and the IRS crimes, and they still refused up until a federal judge had to force them to release them.
It's a disturbing pattern.
Wasn't this going to be the most transparent administration in history?
This is the most transparent administration in history.
So now that federal judges are forcing the lid off the cesspool that is the Obama administration, the Justice Department, and the IRS, will we finally see the crooks like Lerner, Holder, and Obama put where they belong? Although Eric Holder decided to step down as Attorney General the day he lost the federal court fight to hide the Fast and Furious documents,
the only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Even though he claims he is leaving, Holder is still roaming the halls of the Justice Department. Besides his daily race baiting in the media, we here at DateLine wonder what the Attorney General is doing all these late nights in the Justice Department now that two separate federal judges forced him to turn over documents in both Fast and Furious and the IRS scandal.
And I don't know the answer to that.
What could Holder be doing at the Justice Department late at night, all by himself, surrounded by all these damning documents he's been forced to turn over? DateLine Flashback. 2009, The Culture of Corruption in Washington, D.C.
This town needs an enema.
Part 2. As we stated earlier in DateLine, there are some more juicy details in the Solyndra pay-to-play scandal where a billionaire 1%er donor of Barack Obama's donated to his 2008 campaign just to get a kickback for his green scam company.
You disgust me.
To the tune of $540 million taxpayer dollars. Besides donating to the Obama campaign, which everybody knows by now, the George Kaiser Family Foundation also donated to the Urban Health Initiative at the University of Chicago Medical Center. The initiative was the brainchild of who?
I don't know.
Michelle Obama.
You want to arm wrestle?
Not with someone who looks like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson with a wig on. So anyway, Kaiser donated to the initiative created by Michelle in the hospital that she was hired by then Chicago Medical Center chairwoman Valerie Jarrett, and Obama's political stooge David Axelrod had worked for the initiative as well.
It's a disturbing pattern.
Not only that, but one of Barack's best friends, Eric Whitaker, is the executive vice president at the center now and is in charge of the Urban Health Initiative.
It's a disturbing pattern.
The only people missing from this Charlotte's Web of spreading the bribery money around for political kickbacks are convicted felons and Barack Obama's Chicago buddies, Tony Rezko and Rod Blagojevich. The only difference between Rezko and Blagojevich and President Obama is that they didn't have the most corrupt attorney general in American history cleaning up all the evidence behind every crooked deal.
Well, I'm not a crook.
As soon as Solyndra went bankrupt, leaving the hard-working taxpayer out of $500 million, the liberal mainstream media accidentally started to report the story.
Say it ain't so, Joe.
So who stepped in to hide all the evidence?
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
The only cabinet member in the history of the United States to be held in contempt of Congress, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder.
Well, I think it's outrageous.
Holder ordered the FBI to raid the Solyndra headquarters and confiscate every single piece of paper in the joint. And what was the result of this supposed FBI investigation?
And I don't know the answer to that.
Well, your guess is as good as mine, because just like most damning evidence that Attorney General Eric Holder and the Department of Injustice gets its hands on,
And like that, gone.
DateLine. Boycott Nabisco.
Right on!
We here at the Ascend Conservatism Show have never promoted a boycott of products before, but with its sponsorship of a race-baiting tax cheat like Al Sharpton, we thought it was time to start.
I agree with that.
Nabisco has actually paid money to promote their snacks with the most divisive con man on television.
I don't believe that.
Well, at least when President Obama isn't on TV himself playing the race card just to keep up his falling poll numbers.
Right.
So let me clarify that statement. When Obama is not on TV, the Reverend is the most divisive huckster polluting the airwaves with his hateful rhetoric and causing the black community to rise up against an imaginary oppressor, and in the most recent spewing of hate rhetoric was against the police officers of the entire country.
You disgust me.
Fact of the matter is, there are only a handful of blacks killed by cops, but 96% of black deaths caused in America are at the hand of other blacks. But this doesn't fit Sharpton's agenda.
You disgust me.
He can't make any money off of black-on-black crime. And since his hate speech drives up ratings on MSNBC, Nabisco wants to make money with this charlatan.
Shame on you.
While it's a well-known fact that the Rev Al is a racist, he sure does love one type of cracker, the Ritz cracker, that fills the pockets with cold hard cash, the only cracker that Sharpton loves is from Nabisco. I guess with their long list of snacks, Nabisco realizes that it would be a huge moneymaker to advertise on MSNBC, where the only people still watching this failing network are constantly stoned.
Hey, you want to get high, man?
That's how they do. They got wooden balls, man.
But the time for sanity in America is here. It's time that we, the people, boycott Nabisco and its many products like Chips Ahoy, Oreos, Wheat Thins, and Ritz crackers. It's time these companies learn that they need to be more careful with whom they get into bed with. Nabisco, as the old saying goes, you lay down with dogs, you're going to wake up with fleas. Instigators that rile up one group's resentment against another just for monetary and political gain. Let's not forget, Sharpton's community agitating got him in the door of the White House.
Shame on you, Mr. President.
Instigators that create conflict for their own self-interest should not only be shunned but cut off from any and all corporate sponsorship.
Absolutely, positively, unequivocally.
And it was Sharpton's despicable instigating of hatred of police officers that was one of the things that set off the lunatic that killed police officers Rafael Ramos and Wayne Jian Liu. So not only does Al Sharpton have blood on his hands, but the people and companies that support this vile cancer on race relations in this country also have blood on their hands as well. DateLine. Bitch slap of the week. What some might call the most satisfying part of DateLine is here.
Dynamite!
This is where we administer instant justice. No media disinformation, no liberal spin, facts presented, and retribution given. This week's winner of the bitch slap of the week, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Boo! You suck!
Now, I know a lot of you out there wanted us to slap around the main instigator of the anti-police sentiment in the United States right now, but the entire DateLine crew would want in on that action, and we're not sure Al Sharpton would survive.
Wow.
And besides that, the Reverend will eventually get his karmic justice from a higher power. Another reason de Blasio gets the nod here tonight is that he is the mayor of New York City, supposedly elected to improve the lives of New Yorkers.
Okay.
Sharpton is, and always has been, nothing but a race-baiting, poverty pimp only concerned about his high-on-the-hog lifestyle.
Champagne wishes and caviar dreams.
While exploiting the black community and exploiting their hopes of a better life and their need for a true leader that will help them get out from under the shameful 11.4% unemployment rate as it is today.
Come on, what's the matter with you?
Wow, this sort of does sound like Al is the bitch slap winner of the week.
Right on!
So before God takes his swipes at the phony man in cloth and sends him on the express down elevator, let's give the original community agitator one good one. To answer for the deaths that he, in one way or another, incited in his hate-filled, racist, baseless rhetoric in Crown Heights back in 1991, and just last week in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Now on to the mayor.
Boo! You suck!
Yeah, we know.
Okay.
De Blasio has been anti-police from even before he became mayor of New York City, shamelessly pandering to the grievance industry.
Shame on you.
Even though highly successful, with audio evidence from a wiretap that thugs in the outer boroughs refused to bring weapons into the city because of the stop-and-frisk law, de Blasio ran on repealing such an incredible crime prevention tool.
You're a moron!
The results of this liberal loony idea was higher crime.
Duh!
Crime stats for the last 25 days compared to last year. Shooting victims are up 60% and murders are up by 27%.
Outrageous! Outrageous!
As we just hear on the Bitch Slap, it's a very serious problem in America today. Liberalism is not only a mental disease. Whether it's in New York, where its leaders leave its police and public less safe, or it's an incompetent, political motivated President of the United States that gave rise to an Islamic caliphate in the Middle East and caused thousands of deaths from ISIS, the sad fact is that today's liberalism kills. And that's DateLine for this day, December 29th, 2014.